you know, when you walk in the door, you smell boxing.
Yeah.
And I remember as a kid, I worked in a few gyms as summer holidays. Well, summer holidays is for summer money, and it took me back to that. It is a proper gym. I did a bit of boxing myself in All Stars in London, Harrow Road, and I can't say it had quite the smell you get when you walk in here, because this is decades of sweat. Yeah. But it's fantastic. Sounds a bit odd that, but no, it is. It's an amazing place, and you can see. You can feel that it's the breeding ground of champions, British champions, European champions, world champions, you know, and that's where we want to be taking Lyndon. And, you know, Pat Barrett, obviously continue it from the Godfather Hughes of Manchester boxing, and it's a proper gym. I'm saying that like a Londoner standing in Manchester. No, it's a proper gym.
Kalle, you're in town for Saturday night. Wasserman doesn't return, but it's in Bolton for the first time. It was London first show, Newcastle the second, which was at Bolton. Have we got a new date right yet? Are we going all around the UK? Or
we've done Liverpool as well.
Liverpool as well, of course. Apologies.
I'm just remembering if there was another one in between. No, but we're going from there. We will be, as we announced earlier this week. I mean, it has to happen in the North East.
Yes.
You know, Troy Williamson obviously has to get through Saturday night. Rumour has it Josh Kelly will be finding his way ringside Saturday night as well, in the anticipation that Troy does win on Saturday night, and then it's on, and that's a big fight for the North East, and we've got some big plans to go back up there. Can't say too much on the card that we're going to do up there, but it's stacked, and we want to put the biggest North East card on for a long time. So it does excite you especially when you're relatively new in UK boxing. When I say new, we've always had big names, but we've drifted in and out of UK boxing. You know, David Hay, George Groves, and but now we're doing it on a regular basis. It's super interesting, like coming into cities where you promoted before, but big shows, and now you're seeing it like coming into the industry. And Saturday nights, our first time in Bolton. And we're looking forward to learning that part as well, and knowing the environment more. And it's obviously different when you're promoting David Hay or George Groves and with the World Boxing Super Series, Chris Eubank. But it's the journey there, isn't it? So to do that, it's great fun, you know. And it's wherever you go, it's always we're the fight city. What I'd say about Manchester, and I know Bolton's not Manchester, but what I'd say about Manchester, we are in Manchester today, is I remember doing Groves Eubank here, and it was a toss-up between the O2 and the MEN. I know it's not called the MEN anymore, but
everyone still calls it.
The Manchester Arena. Apologies to new sponsor.
No, the MEN are loving it because everyone still calls it the MEN.
But the decision was made on that there was, I think, another 2,000 seats in there. But it was also, there was so many fights going in the O2, and I just remember all these huge nights out of Manchester. So you put a guy from Hammersmith, London, and a guy from Brighton. You don't put them in London, you put in Manchester. That says a lot about Manchester, doesn't it?
It does.
You know, and it's fabulous. I just on the way to the gym now from the station, I saw big posters also for Joyce Parker next week. You see the sort of fights that come up here, and that's something that we will fill that big arena with Lyndon Arthur. That's something that is my driving ambition as a promoter.
Brilliant. Kalle, you mentioned the World Super Series there. I know there's the finals and stuff like that, but that had to be one of the standout nights, Groves v Eubank at a packed-out arena. Yeah,
it was. I mean, it was a huge fight, a huge build-up. Looking back on it now, it was a very tough fight. Bit of a tale of two halves. It was the cut, and there was the injury, then there was a dramatic last round. But it was also, it was a fight, I think, that brought both really out. I know that Groves had the big fights with Froch as well, but that was that fight for me was an iconic British fight, you know. And those sort of fights, you could talk about American boxing and, you know, Vegas and all the lights. Give me Manchester all day long. All day long.
You mentioned Lyndon filling out the arena. We're just talking to him before as well. It's a big switch for him now, going on Channel 5 and all the rest of it. How do you do that? I mean, he's very laid back, as I'm sure you know. He'll fight anyone. He's been over in the States experiencing things, the likes of Beterbiev. I mean, what's your plan as the promoter?
Yeah, I mean, if he's sparring with Beterbiev, you know, it says something about him there. He's not afraid to travel and spar arguably the best light heavyweight in the world at the moment. You know, I look, first of all, getting back Saturday night and then see how that goes. But of course, activity, you know, activity in the public eye. You know, we want to get him back out, dependent on Saturday, as quickly as possible. You look at the domestic fights, and that's the lovely thing when we're talking about UK boxing, is that domestic fights in this country are often, for me, unofficial eliminators then to go on for the world.
We just said the same to Lyndon.
It's like you have a natural,
an eliminator almost.
But it's like a natural process.
Yeah.
You don't have that, for example, in a lot of other countries because there's not that depth. You know, German boxing. Done a lot of German boxing over the years. That we rarely have that, where it's really a fight for the right. And I think, you know, for me, the fight to go and make is the one everyone's talking about. The weight class at the moment is Buatsi. You know, all day long. So
Very lively, wouldn't it?
yeah. You know, we do a lot of work with his promoter. You know, why not?
Yeah.
You know, that's a good one. But then you've got Anthony Yard, a third fight. You've got Dan Aziz. You know, so there's a very good depth of 3-4 guys who, to be fair to them, they're great fighters. Well, they're not mine, but they're not as good as mine. But the depth is there, and I think all those guys are pretty much world level. So, yeah, they haven't achieved what Bivol and Beterbiev have achieved. Yeah. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of merit in those fights, not just being, you know, domestic fights. They're domestic fights with a vision.
Before we let you go, you mentioned before, obviously, you talk about the great night at the arena with Groves and Eubank. You mentioned about talking with other promoters. Can't let you go, obviously, without talking about a fight that's coming up now. We know what's happened and everything else, and I've heard you say the fight's on, the contract's with junior, nothing to do with senior, all the rest of it. But
actually, I said the fight was on about 4 weeks ago at a press conference in London.
Exactly. Yeah. So I know your stance on this, but I'm just interested in terms of your promoter head.
Yeah.
This massive fight, a massive money fight. Let's get it right.
Yeah.
And then you hear something like that. When you hear that he's pulling him out, I mean, do you take that seriously at all when you hear that, or is it like, no, the deal's done, the contract's signed?
You know, despite my very young, boyish good looks, I've been around this game for a hell of a long time, and not even actively as a promoter. That's now a few decades or 2 decades. I don't want to give away too much on the age, but you just learn. I learned to deal with it as a kid. Right? The letdowns of injuries, you know it's a fighter better than anyone else. There's certain things you can't control. But it was a first when I heard that on Monday, so I don't know how to react to that in that first moment. Yeah. You know, my phone went off like a machine gun. And it was like, you know, I spoke to Eddie and Frank, and they were on the way over to Vegas, and they didn't have Wi-Fi on the plane. So when they landed, they put on the phones on. So I think everyone around the show, I was getting calls off everything from you know, obviously from people involved in the show, but to the, I don't know, mates who planning their fly over for it and everything else. And I'm like, relax. I said, step for step here. And I believe it was. I know the journalist. He's a respected journalist. I'm not going to knock him there. I just think it was maybe a bit of a different discussion, and that was taken out of that. And it's gold dust, isn't it, these days? You know, we all know how the internet works or social media works, and fair play. You know, and I spoke to him afterwards. No grudges there. It's absolutely fine. Said it. Okay. Mumbled a story. That's okay.
Good.
Final couple for yourself.
Three quick questions.